In today's video, I'm going to show you many of the queries that you can do for Microsoft Access. A query is where you can get certain types of data or display certain types of data, but there's many more things you can do with a query as well. Now here, in this video, I'm using Access 2016. However, the same thing should work in Access 2013, 2010, 2007. These techniques really should work with the different versions of Access, also Office 365. And also, even though I have specific examples here using specific data, the techniques and these queries will work on any types of data. All right. So notice how we have a bunch of tables here. So the first type of query I want to show you is called a select query, and a select query can show records that meet a certain criteria. So now I try to make my mouse a little bit bigger for the demonstration here, and also sometimes I make my mouse do that so you can see where my mouse is. So I'm going to pick on the Create tab. And under the Create tab, we have the Query Wizard and Query Design. Query Design is how we make a query from scratch, and then towards the end of this session, I'll show you some of the queries that come with the Query Wizard as well. So I'll pick another Query Design. Now, a query can come from one or more tables, or one or more queries, or any combination thereof. So in this case, we're going to use the Customers table. I'll double click on Customers. And then you can see the Customers table as part of the query. Now, I could choose more than one table or query right now, but we can always start with one. Later on, I'll show you a query that has more than one table. I'll pick on Close. Now, this screen is called Query Design. Up here, you would have your tables or queries from which this query comes from. If there was more than one, they'd be listed across the top there. Now, down here, you have your grid where you're going to make your query. And we'll see how that works when we start picking our fields. So after you've chosen your tables, you're going to start to pick your fields. A quick way to pick your fields is to double click on the fields. So I'll double click on Customer ID, Company Name, Contact Name, Contact Title, and we'll pick on Country. And you can see what happened down here. Now, one query can have up to 255 fields. And if you had more fields than what would fit on the screen, you would just scroll over to the right and you would see the additional fields. You can see exactly what happened. On the field row, I have the field names. From the table row, I have the table from which those fields are coming from. Now, when you only have one table, that's kind of redundant. But when you have more than one table, it'll be useful to know which tables those fields are coming from. I'll show you what the sort row does in a few minutes. That's really how you sort your query. Notice how the show row has a checkbox, so I can either show that field or not. Sometimes you want to use the field for criteria only, but you don't necessarily want to show the field in the end result, so I can either show that field or not. And I'll show you how to use the criteria row and the other rows very soon. If I were to run this query right now, it would show me every single record of the customer's table, but it will only show you those 5 fields. To run the query, we'll pick on the Design menu up top, and we'll pick on the word Run right there. And that's one way to run a query. I'll pick on Run. And now you can see it actually pushes it back into the table. So a query is just a subset of a table in this case. It actually shows you every single record in the customer's table with those 5 fields. So right away, one good reason to use a query is if you only want to see certain fields in the table. Now let's go back to Design View. I'm going to right-click on this tab, and I'll pick on Design View. And that's one way to get back to Design View. And now here we are again. Now, let's say I just want to see the customers whose country equals Italy. So look where I want to go. I'm in the criteria row of the country column, and I'm right there. And I'll type in the word Italy. And that's how easy these can be. So I'm saying I just want the customers whose country equals Italy. We'll come back here and we'll run it. And now we have a lot less records. We just had the records from Italy. So the point about a query is that you ask a question and you get an answer. My question was, show me all of the customers whose country equals Italy. When I run the query, I get the answer. Now that's a plain vanilla type of query. Pretty soon we'll have Rocky Road and Chubby Hubby and more exotic examples, but you have to start kind of at the beginning, right? So I'll pick on Design View. Here's another way to get the Design View. Come up here and pick on that, the triangle, and that brings you back to Design View as well. Notice how I'll put the word Italy in quotes. That's just syntax. So you can type it in without the quotes, but it needs the quotes to make it run. And I'll show you why very soon. Now, what if I want to see the ones from Italy or Spain or from Germany? So here's what you do. Here's one way to do it. After the word Italy, I'll type in or, then I'll type in Germany or France. So one way to put more than one criteria in the same field is you separate it with the word or. And you could have as many ors as you need going across. So now it's going to show me records from either Italy or France or Germany. We're going to run it again. Here's run up there. And now notice how I have some from either Italy or Spain, France or Germany. So now notice how it did not sort the country. Just because you put the criteria in, it does not sort automatically. Now, of course, I can sort from this window. I can right-click on one of those countries and pick on Sort A to Z, and you can see how that worked. All right. Let's go back to Design View. Another way to sort the query is with the sort row. That way, every time it runs, it'll automatically sort in that field. So follow my mouse. I'm going to start on the sort row, and click on the sort row for the country column. Then I'll click in the pull down, and I'll say sort that field ascending, which means every time we run the query, it's going to sort it by the country. Now, let me show you how to do a wildcard type of query. Let's say that every time you run this query, you just wanted to have it for the salespeople. So I'm going to type in asterisk sales asterisk. Let's take a closer look at that. So in this case, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that better. It says asterisk, sales, asterisk. That means I don't care what's before the word asterisk, before the word sales, and I don't care what's after the word sales, as long as the word sales is in the contact title. Oh, and by the way, they'll also have to be from Italy or Germany or Spain, or from France. So these things come in, you have as much criteria as you wanted to. Now, the asterisk is the wildcard symbol in Access. So I'll pick on Run again. And notice how I have less records because now the word sales has to be in the contact title. Here you have sales representative, sales associate, and even assistant sales agent. All right, that's what the wildcard did for us. And they're all from either France or Germany or Italy. Notice how they're all sorted by the country as well because of the sort route. So let's go back to Design View. Oh, notice how I put the word like in there. I'll show you why that happened. And it put the word sales with the asterisk around the quotes. And then when the quotes are also around the words Italy and Germany or Spain, and I have the ascending in the sort row for the country. So that's why we got the results that we got. Now, let me show you why it's reconfiguring what we type in. It's really for the SQL or the structured query language that goes along with that query. So you can do this with any existing query. I'll pick on the View menu up top, or the View choice, and I'll pick on SQL View. SQL View is also pronounced Sql View. It's really an acronym. It means Structured Query Language. So I'll pick on SQL View. And let's zoom in on that. So here's the structured query language. Now, for many databases, you have to know what to type in on the screen to get the query to work, like SQL Server or Oracle. Here in Access, we can use the other screen, and it'll make the SQL for us. This is what actually runs when the query runs. Now, the select line is the field names, as you can see. So that's why it's called a select query, for that exact reason right there. The from line is the table. The where is the criteria. So notice how it says like right there. So, and then it says the word Italy in quotes right there, and then the Germany. So this is the reason why it changed our code for us so that the SQL would work appropriately. So you can just type it in and it'll change it the way it needs to change it. And just leave it the way it changes it, it's fine. Now, some people like to use this screen and update the query in this way. If you know the SQL language, you can do that. But most of us would just prefer to go into the other screen. So I want to right-click on this tab, and I'll pick on Design View. And we're back again. Okay? So you can go into any query and then pick on View up top and then pick on SQL View. And you can actually change the SQL from the screen, or it's actually a great way to learn the SQL language as well. So I'll go back to Design View, but a lot of people just prefer to work from the query on the screen. Now, when the query is the way I want it to be, of course, I'd like to save it. So when I close the window up here, it'll ask me to save. So I'm going to close and save. Now, you want to give your queries a name. I'm going to call it QRY salespeople. There's a naming standard in Access. You would prefix your tables with TBL. You would prefix your queries with QRY. Forms would be FRM, and reports would have the prefix of RPT. You don't need to do it, but many people do it in the Access community. So that's why I called it QRY_salespeople. And I'll click on OK. Now notice over here in the navigation pane, we have our tables, and now we have a queries category as well. To run that query, I'm just going to double click on it. So I'll double click on Query Salespeople, and that'll run the query for me again. Now, if I want to change that query, you would right click on that query and then pick on Design View. But to run the query, you would just double click on it. Notice how it says we have 11 records here. So I'm going to close that window. What actually runs, by the way, is that SQL code that we saw. Now, if you change the original table, then the query will also change the next time that it runs. So I'm going to go back to the customers table, double click on customers, and let's say we're going to change the second record for the contact title to the word sales, so it'll meet the criteria. And I'll make sure that the country is among the countries that I selected, so I'll type in Germany here. So you can type in new records or just change existing records, and if it meets the criteria, it'll show up in the query. So I'm going to close this window. When we close this window, it'll save automatically. Now, I'll double click in the query. Remember before I had 11 records. And now you can see we have 12. So when you change the table, the query will change automatically the next time that you run it, which makes it very useful. Next, I'd like to show you how to do a date range within a query. So we'll make a new query this time. Once again, I'll pick on the Create tab, and I'll pick on the Query Design choice, and we'll go with the Orders table this time, Orders. And we'll close that window. Later on, we'll do some queries that have more than one table. Now you start to pick your fields. I'll double click on Order ID, Customer ID, Employee ID, Order Date, Required Date, Ship Date, and I'd like to get the freight, and I'd like to get the amount. You can really have as many fields as you wanted to, as you can see. Now, watch where my mouse is going to go. I'm going to go on the criteria of the order date field, right there. Now, sometimes the criteria can get rather large, so we're going to go into something that's called the builder. If you follow my mouse up here, I'll pick on the word builder. And then you get a very powerful screen in Access. It's called the expression builder. You would also see the expression builder in forms and reports, and sometimes even in tables and macros. It's a very powerful screen because here we can build a formula. Now in this case, I'm going to type in the word between, and I'll type in 1/1/2000, which is January 1st of the year 2000, and 3/31/2000, which is March 31st of the year 2000. So let's take a closer look at that formula. It says between 1/1/2000 and 3/31/2000. That should get me every record between January 1st and March 31st, by the way, including those two dates as well. So if there's any from January 1st, it'll be included there as well. You can use the between operator in many ways. With numbers, I could say between 200 and 400. Or with names, I could say between A and G, and then it would give me all the names between the letters A and G. All right, so I'll click on OK there. Now notice where that landed. It landed in the criteria of the order date field. Notice how I'll put the pound signs around the dates. I can expand that column just like you would in Excel. I'll get the black cross here and double click. So I put the pound signs around the dates for the same reason I put the quotes around the text earlier. It's for that SQL that I showed you. I'm going to run this now. And now you can see it gave me every order between the dates of January 1st of the year 2000 and March 31st of the year 2000. So I guess I didn't have any exact records from March 31st, but it gave me every record between January 1st and March 31st. So that's how you could do a date range. You could use the between operator, as you can see, between this and that. Now, I also like to see the orders that are more than $500. So in this case, I'll click on the criteria row of the order amount field, and I'll type in greater than 500. So let's take a closer look at that. Greater than 500. So you can type in things like greater than, less than, those kind of things, right? So now it has to be more than $500, and it also has to be between those two dates at the same time. And in this case, I'm going to sort it by the order amount field as well. So I'll pick on the sort row of the order amount, and I'll pick on a descending, so the higher amounts will be up top. We're going to go ahead and run that. Here's run over there. And notice how all the amounts are over $500. All of the dates are between those two date ranges. So you can see this time it's sorted by the order amount because I chose the sort row. If I scroll down, you can see they're all over $500. All right, so you can have as much criteria as you wanted to get the exact records that you're looking for. So I'm going to go back to design view. Good. Now, let me show you something over here that's called the OR row. When the criteria is in the same row like it is here, then everything on the same row has to be true at the same time. It has to be between the dates, and it has to be more than $500. So when things are on the same row, then we call that a logical AND. This and that has to be true. But let's see what happens if we move that criteria to the OR row. So notice I'm going to click on the OR row of the order amount, and I'll type in greater than 500 there. That means it has to be either between the two dates, or it has to be more than $500, but they don't have to be true at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. So notice how here's one from 1999, but it's over $500. So now either of the choices has to be true. They don't both have to be true at the same time. Here's one from 1999, but it's over $5,000, $500. Now if I scroll down, here's some that are less than $500 that are within the date range. So like I said, with the OR row, either of the conditions have to be true. They don't both have to be true at the same time. So now I'll go back to the design mode. Good. So let's put it back so that that's on the same row. I'm going to get rid of that from the OR row. I'm going to click on the original criteria row, and I'll type in greater than 500. So if things are on the same row as something else, then they all have to be true at the same time. That's a logical AND. And if things are on different rows, then it becomes a logical OR. And all the rows below the OR row, those are just additional OR rows. So, you can have a really complicated query. I can have this and that, or this, that, and that, or this, that, and that. You know what I mean? You can have lots of different criteria using what I just showed you. Now we'll see it'll be back to the way it was. Now they're all over $500, and they're also all between those two dates. Let's go back to design view. Here's another way to go back to design view. I'm going to right click on that tab and pick on design view from there. Either way is fine. Okay, good. Now, in this case, it had the dates hard coded in there, so it'll always run for January 1st to March 31st. Well, what if instead you want this to prompt the user for the dates? So watch what we'll do. I'm going to click where it says between, and here's another way to get to the builder. I'm going to right click on that area, and I'll pick on the word build, and it'll bring us to the same screen. In this case, I'm going to get rid of the criteria there, and I'll zoom in for you. All right. Now, a way to cause a prompt for the user is with these brackets, the square brackets, and you can type in anything between the brackets. So I'll say enter begin date, and then close the brackets. I'll type in the word and then another open bracket, and I'll say enter end date, close bracket. So it says between open brackets and the words enter begin date, close brackets, and open bracket and the words enter end date, and then close brackets. So that's actually going to prompt the user for the criteria when it runs. So to make a prompt in your criteria, you just substitute what you had with the actual brackets there, and you can type in anything between the brackets. And you can have those prompt fields on a date field or on a text field or any other field here in Access. So I'll click on OK. Now let's go ahead and run that. And look what it says. Enter the begin date. So this time I'll type in 4/1/2000, and now enter end date 6/30/2000. And now it'll show me the records between those two dates, as you can see. Now every time I run that query, I'm going to go back and run it again. It's going to ask me for the dates again. So this makes it much more flexible. Now they can type in any date that they want. And what caused those prompts to happen is those brackets around your field, around the text. And you can have those, it's not just for a date field, it's for any kind of field. All right, so I wanted to make sure we saw that kind of query. I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and of course we'll save it. Now this time I'll call it QRY orders within a date range. And you can start to see I could have numerous queries there. Your database can have over 2,000 different objects in there. So I don't think you would ever approach that, although you might, but the limit is within the thousands. And the database size can be up to 4 gigabytes. The total size can be up to 4 gigabytes. So you could have lots and lots of data here in Access. I'd like to show you how to run a query on a yes/no field. So in this case, I have my products table, and I'd like to find all the discontinued products. So once again, I'll pick on the Create menu, and I'll pick on Query Design. And this time we'll use the products table. And I'll pick on the product ID and the product name, and we'll find a field that's called discontinued. Now I just know that the discontinued is one of those yes/no fields. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And you can see what I'm talking about. There's a checkbox which indicates it's a yes/no field. If it's checked, that means it's yes or true. And if it's not checked, it means it's false or no. So we'll go back to Design View again. I just want to see the ones where it is discontinued. So I'll type in the word yes there. You can type in the word yes or the word true, and that'll give you the ones that are filled in. Or you can type in the words no or false, and that'll give you the ones that are not filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and run that, and you can see there are several that have been discontinued. All right. So we use yes/no fields for that purpose. Maybe another example of a yes/no field is this product seasonal? Yes or no. Is the customer active? Yes or no. So you would use the yes/no fields in that way. In the criteria, you can type in the word yes or the word true, and that will give you the ones that were filled in. Or you can use the word no or the word false, and that will give you the ones that were not filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and close that window. We'll say yes there. And I'll call this one QRY_discontinued products. So you can mix and match as much of this criteria to get to the exact results that you're looking for. Next, I'd like to show you how to do a calculation in your query. So let's go back to the one with the dates. I'm going to go ahead and right-click on that, and I'll pick on Design View. All right, so I have the order amount, and I have the freight. Well, let's say we'd like to add something that's called sales tax. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the, what you do is you click on the next row, the next column across, the next blank column, and I'm going to pick on the field row. And once again, I'll go back to the builder. I like the builder a lot, and in this example, we'll show you why I like it a lot. So when I'm in the builder, I can then pick my fields to be used in another formula. So the sales tax, for example, might be the order amount. I just double-clicked on the word order amount, and watch what happened up here. It put the word order amount within those brackets. Now, you could have typed that in, but I think a quicker way is just to double-click on the fields over here in the expression builder in the second column. Now, when you do this, if the fields do not show up in the expression builder, what you might want to do is pick on cancel for a second and then save your query. When you save the query, then the next time you go into the expression builder, the fields will be there. That's very important to know about. So let me go back there again. I'm going to right click on that section. I'll pick on the word build, and you can see the fields over here in the expression builder. I'm going to double click on the word order amount, and I'll say times. I'm recording this from Pennsylvania in the United States, and in Pennsylvania, the sales tax is 6%. So do 0.06. A normal Excel formula might say equals B1 times 0.06. In Access, we're going to use the field names instead of the cells. Otherwise, the math can be the same, and it can be as simple or as complicated as you need. Just substitute the cell references that you might use in Excel with the actual field names. I'll click on OK. And now it says expression 1 order amount. And I'm sure if I extend that, it says order amount times 0.06. So let's go ahead and run that. Now it's going to ask for the date. So I'll type in 1/1/2000 and 3/1/2000. And we can see we have a new column that's called expression 1. First of all, I want to give that field a better name. I want to make it look better. Notice how some have 2 decimal places. This one only has 1. This one has 4, 3. Obviously, I want to change that. So let's go ahead and make that field look better. But it looks like, I'm sure if we did the math looks like it came out to be correct. I went back to Design View. Let me zoom in on that field for you. Good. First of all, I'm going to change the field name. Anything before the colon is the field name. So I'll type in sales tax. And then we still have the colon there. And then anything after the colon is the field formula. So that's how you can change the field's name. Now let's see how we're going to reformat that field. You're going to right click on that field and you pick on the word properties. All right, so you right click on any field within your queries and you pick on the word properties. That's going to open up a new menu on the side that's called the property window. It's on the right hand side right over here. And I'll pick on the word format. I'll click on the pull down for the format. And then you have different number of formats, and I'll pick on, let's say I'll go with currency. All right, so that property sheet came up because of the following. I'm going to close that window for a second. I right-clicked on that field, right-clicked, and then I picked on the word properties. And then you get this extra window on the side. From here, I changed the format to say currency. And you can change the decimal places. Let me zoom back in. Okay. So now let's see if we run it this time. See, I'll ask for the dates, 1/1/2000, 3/31/2000. And notice how the sales tax looks a whole lot better. It's formatted with currency. It says the word sales tax. Everything has 2 decimal places, right? Let's see how again we're going to add a field in there. So I'm going to go back to Design View. Now I would like to take the order amount plus the sales tax plus the freight to get the total for that order. So now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on the next field, the next blank column. Let's go back to the builder. I'm going to right click on the word on that field and pick on the word build. I want you to notice that the sales tax is not in there yet. So here's what we'll do. Remember what I told you a few minutes ago. I'll pick on cancel. You're going to save your query. I'll come up here and do a normal save. Now, when I right click in that field, it does show the builder. And then when I show the builder, it does show the sales tax. All right, so that was a really nice lesson. save your query first before you go into the expression builder so that all the fields will show up there. So now I'll double click on order amount. Notice how, again, it shows up in the expression builder. Any field is going to be surrounded by those brackets. And I'll type in the plus sign, double click on freight, type in another plus sign, and I'll double click on sales tax. So an Access formula is like an Excel formula, except you're going to use your field names. Otherwise, the math is the same, and it can be just as complicated or as simple as any other formula. Even in Access, you have built-in functions, okay? So notice how there's lots of built-in functions in Access, and you can use those in your formula as well. What I did in the expression builder is I put in the word functions, and then I picked the word built-in functions, all right? I'm going to click on OK. And now we have a new column that's called expression 1. Well, you know what I like to do. I like to give that a better name. So I'm going to zoom in. And instead of expression 1, I'll call it line total. Remember what I said, anything before the colon is the field's name. And anything after the colon is the field's formula. Let's go ahead and run it. And we'll have the dates once again. I'll do 1/1/00 and 3/31/00. All right, so notice how we have the sales tax, and now we have the line total. Now I'm going to expand the freight field over here. Okay, so I'm sure if we did the math, it would do the math, right? So that's how you can do a calculation within your query. I'm going to close this one, and we'll save it. And you can start to see we have several queries over there. Now next, I'd like to show you how to do totals within your query. This is going to be a really good one. If I look at my orders table, so here I have the customers. Now I'm going to sort by the customer column. I'm going to right click there and pick on the word sort. And then all of the orders for the same customer are together. What I like to do is for each customer, I let the total up their order amount. So get a subtotal for each customer. A quick and easy way to do that in Access is with a great query that's called a totals query. So I'm going to close that window. And let's make a new query. So I'll pick on create. Once again, we'll go to query design. And I will use the orders table. And I'll pick on close. Now watch my mouse up here. We're going to pick on the word totals right there. And that makes it into what we call a totals query. Notice how we have the word total right there. The point of the totals query is I can do sub counts or subtotals and different calculations as well. Now I said I wanted to. Now you pick another field that you actually want to summarize. You pick at least one field. I'll pick on the order amount. I'm going to double click on order amount. Now down here, I don't want to group by that field. I want to do something different. So I'll zoom in for you, show you some choices. I'm going to click on the pull down where it says group by for that row. And I'll pick, and notice how you have some great choices here. Sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, standard deviation, variance. First means the first occurrence of that field, for like the earliest occurrence of that field for that customer. And last means the most recent occurrence. So those are interesting there as well. We'll pick on sum. So what are we asking for here? For each different customer, I want to get a sum of the orders. I want to run the query. And very quickly, we were able to get a subtotal for each customer. I mean, the totals query is really powerful. Watch again. I'm going to go back to design view. Now this time I want to see how many orders are for each customer. So we'll add another field. I'll do order amount again. In fact, I'll do order amount a third time. Notice down here I have the customer ID, which we're going to group by, which means we're going to summarize in customer ID. For the first order amount, we'll do a sum. I'll come over here and there I'll pick on the word count. And then there I'll pick on the word average. So in the same query, I'm going to get a sum of all the orders for that customer, a count, and an average. So you can get some great results with the totals query. Let's go ahead and run it. And now for each customer, I have the subtotal of their orders, the count, and the average. Now I can get some interesting results. Which customer placed the most dollar amount of orders? So I'm going to right click on that amount and I'll pick on sort largest to smallest. Turns out that Quick Stop, in this case, spent the most money with our company. Who had the most number of physical orders? I'll right click on this number and I'll pick on sort largest to smallest. And now Save a Lot had the most number of orders. Who had the highest average order? I'm going to right click on that field and I'll say sort largest to smallest. And actually Quick Stop had the highest average order. And then you can scroll down from there. So this gives you some really great results here. Let's go back to Design View. First of all, we put in the word totals up here to make it into a totals query. That gave us the total row. Then you pick a field that you want to group it on. In this case, we picked on customer ID. And then you pick at least one field. And then on the total row, you can pick on sum, average, minimum, maximum, count, and those different choices. And you can have more than one. That's what we call a totals query. With that, you can get subtotals and subcounts and these kind of great results. I'm going to close that window and we'll save it. In this case, I'll call it QRY orders totaled by customer. I really like to give them a good name. Sometimes I go to people's offices as a consultant and they'll have queries that'll be called like query 1 and query 2 and query 3. Well, that gets really confusing really quickly, you know? So you want to give them a good name. Absolutely. Now let's make one more select query and then very soon we'll see different types of queries. I want to make a query that comes from more than one table. So we're going to pick on the Create menu again and I'll pick on Query Design. And I'll use the orders table, and I'll use the customers table. Now, even on existing queries, I can go back to existing queries and add tables to there as well. But here you can pick more than one table as soon as you make the query. I'll pick on Close there. Now, notice how we have the orders table and we have the customers table. And it made an assumption for us. In this case, the assumption is correct. It assumed that those two tables are joined by the customer ID field. So it looked at the two tables and it wanted to see if there was a common field between those two tables. And it did find a common field, customer ID. And another thing is the customer ID, notice here has a little key there. That means it's the primary key of that table. So it'll try to find a common field, and if one of those fields is actually the primary key of that table, it'll make that assumption for us. Now, notice that line there, that's the relationship between those two tables. If it didn't make that for you, I'll show you how to make it yourself. I'm going to click on that line and I'll delete it. Here I could even right click on that line and pick on delete. Good. If it didn't make that line for you, you really want that there, and I'll show you why in a few minutes. From here, I'll pick up the word customer ID and drag it to the customer ID on the other side. And now it made that line or that relationship. Now, the two fields in question there do not have to have the same field name. It's always nice when they do have the same field name, but that's not necessary. As long as they're the same data type, and as long as the underlying data is the same, that's more important. Now, I can actually pick fields from both tables. So over here, I'll pick on order ID, customer ID, employee ID, order date, and order amount. And from this table, I'll pick up the contact name and the contact title and the country. All right. Now, look what happened. On the table row, some of the fields say the word orders, and that means those fields came from the orders table. And then these fields over here came from the customers table. See how it says customers in the table row. When there's only one table, that doesn't, it's just redundant. But when there's more than one table, it definitely is useful to have that. Let's go ahead and run that. And we find 830. Now, what's nice about this is it shows the orders information and also the customer information on the same screen. It knew which customer to use because of that relationship. So it knew which customer to associate with that order because of that relationship. Notice how it says 830 down there. I'm going to go ahead and close that window. Let's see what happens if this relationship is not there. I'm going to click on that line and then delete it with my delete key. Now it's still a 2-table query, but the tables are not joined. Let's see what we get this time. Remember before we had 830 records. Now we have 75,530 records, and notice how you have all these duplicates. So my really important point here is when you have more than one table in your query, you have to find a way to join them together, otherwise you get tons of duplicate data. Let's go back and fix that. So we'll make that relationship again. We'll pick up customer ID and I'll drag it to the customer ID of this table. Pick up customer ID from here and drag it to customer ID to here. All right. So now if I run it again, now we're back to our normal result of 830 records. So it's so important to get that table joined in there. So let's try another example. Let me show you how you would add another table to an existing query. You come over here on the design menu and you pick on the word show table right there. Now you can pick from another table. So I'll pick on the employees table. Now I could even go more than that, but this will make the point that I'm trying to make. Now the employees table got joined to the employees to the orders table by the employee ID. So it made that assumption. Notice how the employee ID field is the primary key of this table. So that's why I chose that field. It's always looking for those common fields. Now you might want to move these around. Notice how the employees table is not joined to the customers table. All of the tables do not have to be joined to every other table. It would almost be impossible for that to happen in real life. As long as each table is joined to one other table, that's all that you really need. Now I can pick fields in the employees table as well. So I'll pick on first name and last name and title and maybe the phone number and the extension. So now, if they have a problem with that order, they can contact that salesperson directly. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. Now notice we still have 830 records, which is good. But now I have fields from the orders table, from the customers table, and now from the employees table as well. And it knew which customer goes with that order because of that relationship. And it knew which employee went with that order because of that relationship as well. So I can add another table here. If I added another table, that table would have to be joined to just one of those other tables. But you'd have to join it somehow. If it wasn't joined, then you would start to get lots of duplicate records, all right? So that's how you can make a query with more than one table. I'm going to close that window, and we'll say yes. And we'll call this one QRY orders with employee and customer information. Good. And I'll give my queries a very specific name like we're seeing here. Now the next kind of query that I want to do, those are all select queries. Every single one of those was a select query. Once again, let me show you why it's called a select query. I'm going to go right click on this one and I'll pick on design view. Then from here, I'll right click on the tab and I'll go to SQL View or Sql View. And notice how every one of them will say the word select there. And that's why they're called a select query, for that exact reason. The verbiage in here might be different, but they all start with the word select, so they're all select queries. I'm going to close that window. Okay, good. Now, the next type of query that we're going to use is called an update query. An update query can actually change values in a different table. So let's take a look at our products table. Here we have the product name, the supplier, and so on. Over here we have a unit price. Let's say your company says, okay, listen, everything needs to change by a 10% increase. Now you could change those one by one. It would take a long time. Even here, there's 100 records. That would still take probably, you know, a good amount of time. We can actually update all of those with an update query. Now, before you make an update query, I would highly recommend to you to make a copy of that table first, just in case the update query doesn't go well or you can't figure it out. I would always make a copy of this table. In fact, let's do that right now. So I'm going to right-click in the products table, and I'll pick on copy. And I'll right-click there again, and I'll pick on paste. We'll just do a classic copy and paste. In this case, I'll just copy the table, call it copy of products. That'll be fine. As long as I have a copy somewhere, then I'll be happy about that. Good. And now we have a new table that's called copy of products, just in case if I have to go back to that. Now, before I run this query, let's take a look at a couple of these records. Here it says 18, 19, 10, 22. Right, those are the unit prices right now. I'm going to close that window. Here's going to be an update query. We're going to pick on the create menu, and I'll pick on query design. And we'll use that table that you want to update, which is the products table. Everything starts off as a select query. Now watch my mouse up here. On the design tab, notice how you have different types of queries. In this video, I'll show you an update query and append query. Now we're going to do a cross-tab query, except later on we'll do that with a wizard. And there's a make table query. That'll make a new table from the result of the query. And append query will add records to another table. So we'll go into combine records. We're going to do that one pretty soon. An update query will update records in a table. That's what we're going to do right now. There's the cross tab, but we're going to do that with a wizard. A delete query will delete records from a table. You have to be careful with that one. It really does delete them. A union query is kind of interesting. It'll combine. That's another way to combine two different tables into one big query. But with that one, you have to know the SQL. And then we have different types of queries here. So let's go ahead and pick on the word update. Now this is very, very subtle, but notice how it says the word update to right there, and now we know it's an update query. So the field that I want to update is the unit price. And I just double click the unit price. Now I'm going to come down here. This time I'll just type it in. So I'm going to type in open bracket unit price. You have to spell it the same way as it's spelled in a table if you're going to type it in. But the field name always has to be in brackets. Then I'll say times 1.1, which is going to be a 10% increase. So that's going to take the current unit price, multiply it by 1.1, and put it right back into the unit price fields. Let's go ahead and run this query. It says I'm about to update 100 rows. So it will update all of the rows, all right, or whichever ones that you have selected. You could put criteria here, and then it would only update the ones that meet a certain criteria. But in this case, because I did not put any criteria, it'll update all of the rows. So now I do have a backup of that table, so that's fine. I'm going to update this. Now, when you run this kind of query, it actually did change the table, but it doesn't show you the results. So your natural inclination might be to say, okay, well, nothing happened there. Let me run that again. That would be a really bad idea because it already ran. All right. So now let me show you that it did run. Let's go back to the products table. I remember the first product at the price of $18. I kind of remember that one. Now it says $19.80. So that's a 10% increase. If you think about it, 18 plus $1.80 would be $19.80. I remember the second one was 19. Now it's $20.90. So think about it. $19 plus $1.90 is $20.90. So that's a 10% increase. And I remember the next one was 10 plus 1 equals 11. So it changed all of the prices. That's the power of the update query. But to make sure you don't get burned, you have to do two steps, okay? You have to make a copy of your table like we did, and you have to check your work. If you copy your table and check your work every time, you're not going to get burned by the update query. If you leave either of those steps out, then you might get burned, right? So I would always back up my table and check my work. And you can see it updated all of those in one step. Now, I don't really have to save the update query. Once it's run, then it's done its job. So, I really maybe don't even want that hanging around because I don't want that to be run accidentally. So I might close this window and not save it. But the way we made an update query is up on the design menu. Right here, I picked the word update. And then it gives us the update to row. You're going to change a field to something else. You're going to update it. And that's the purpose of the update query. In this case, I really don't even want that around. Once it's run, it's served its purpose. Now, the next type of query is called an append query. An append query will take records from one query and add them or append them to another table. So it's one way to combine your tables together. Here I have the products table that we were just looking at. And in the products table, we currently have 101 records. You can see that. And by the way, all the prices changed because of that update query. Notice how I have a new product table that's called new products. Okay, maybe that came in from the home office, or maybe that came in from your vendors that they have new products available. So we want to take these 3 records and append them to the other table. Well, a great way to do that is with an append query. Now, the tables should be fairly similar. They don't have to be exactly similar, but they should have some common fields in order to do the append query. So I'll pick on the word create up there, pick on query design. Now you pick the table that you're going to append to. I'm going to append it to the products table. All right. You know what? I'm mistaken about that. You're going to pick the table that you're going to append it from. So let's go ahead and get rid of the products table. I'll right click on pick a remove table. I'll get the show table window again. And actually you pick the table that you're copying it from. So I'll get the new products table. Good. That's right. You're going to pick the table that you're appending it from. Now watch my mouse up here and you'll pick on the word append. Makes it an append query. And it's going to ask which table you're going to append it to. And now we'll pick on the products table. Good. Now, if the tables have similar field names, which these tables do, then I want to pick as many of these fields as I can. And hopefully most of them will have a match in the other table. So now I'm not going to use the product ID field. The product ID is one of those auto number fields. So that'll automatically generate in the new table. So I probably wouldn't choose that. Now I'll pick on product name. I'm actually going to hold down my shift key on my keyboard and I'll pick on the bottom field. And that selected all of the fields, which is good. Now I'm just going to drag these into the fields. And now let's see what happened. This is kind of interesting. First of all, it made a column for each different field. And then when it could, it find the appropriate field name or the matching field name in the other table. So it's really great when the 2 tables have common fields, and then it'll make that assumption that one field is going to go into the other field in the other table. Now let's say it didn't find a match. Let's say that was blank. What you would do is you would click on the append to row for that field. You would click on the pull down and then pick the appropriate field from the second table. Now in this case it does have the same field name, but sometimes it doesn't. But if you ever try this and it doesn't give you the automatic field name down here, you would click on the blank one, click on the pull down, and then pick the appropriate field from the table where you're going to append it to. Now what this should do is you just take all the records from the new products table and append them to the products table. Let's go ahead and run that. And it says we're about to append 3 rows. Now once we're done with that, you can save that, or really I might be done with that for right now. I might save that one so for the next time I get the new products, I'll just run the same query. So why don't we even save that one? Close that and we'll say yes. And I'll say QRY append new products. Now the new products table is still there. Great. But let's take a look at the products table. Now notice that the products table has 104 records. Before I had 101. And if I go to the bottom, it's always going to append them at the bottom of the table. And now you can see those 3 records are there. All right. So we use an append query to copy records from one table to another table. And you can see it was very effective. I'm going to close that window. By the way, notice the append query over here has a different icon. These are all select queries, right? You can see by the icon. But this one has a little bit of a different icon. It has the plus sign, which means it's an append query. So sometimes just by looking at the icon of the query, you can tell which type of query it is. Most of them you'll see will probably be the select queries like these, but once in a while you might see a different one like that one, which is an append query. Now I want to show you the 3 queries that I like that are query wizards, and these will help you quite a bit as well. So I'll pick on the create menu, and then you pick on the word query wizard. And we have the crosstab query, the find duplicates query, and the find unmatched query. The simple query wizard doesn't really save you any time. I don't really recommend that you use that. The crosstab query wizard is going to give you results that you might see in a pivot table in Microsoft Excel. It's going to give you cross-references of your fields. It could even give you results like give me all the products, give me all the customer sales month by month. So let's try a crosstab query wizard. We're going to pick that and pick on OK. Remember how I got to here was pick on the word query wizard under the create menu. I pick on OK. Then we'll pick on the table in question, which in this case is going to be orders. I'll double click on orders. Now it says, which fields do you want for your row headings? What's going to be on each row? So I'll double click on customer ID, and then each row will be a different customer, as you can see in the sample down below. Pick on next. What field do you want for your column headings? What do I want on each column? Now I can pick any other field and do a cross-reference on any other field. But if I want it by month or by year, I'll pick on order date. You pick on some kind of date field. Then I'll pick on next. Now, because it's a date field, I can do it by quarter, month, year, or date. So I'll pick on month. I'll pick on next. Now it says, what number do you want calculated for each row and each column intersection? So for each customer, for each month, what do I want to see? I want to see the order amount. I'll pick on order amount. And then over here you can do sum, count, average, and there's different calculations. So I'll pick on sum. What am I asking for? I'm saying for each different customer, for each different month, give me a sum of the orders for that month. I'll pick on next. We'll give this a name called QRY orders cross tab. Maybe I'll say by customer. And then let's see what's going to happen. I'll pick on finish. And look what we have. In less than 2 minutes, I have it broken down by customer. Here's the total for each customer, and then it breaks it down month by month. So that's the kind of results that you get with a crosstab query, similar to what you might get in a pivot table in Microsoft Excel. And what's really great about that one is that it's a wizard that just comes with access. When I picked on query wizard, that was called the crosstab query wizard. Very powerful stuff right there. Now let's find one that's called, the next wizard that I'd like to show you is called the Find Duplicates Query Wizard. This means you're looking for duplicate data within your table. Over time, your table might accumulate duplicates. We want to find a way to show the duplicates. So I'll pick on the Find Duplicates Query Wizard. I'll click on OK. Now, once again, you pick your tables. So I know that I have some duplicates, or I think that I have some duplicates in the products table. Pick on next. It says which field might contain the duplicate information. So let's say I think I have duplicates in the product name field. So I double click on product name. If you picked more than one field, you can pick as many as you wanted to, but then all of those fields would have to be duplicated for each record. So if just the product name field was duplicated and you picked more than one here, that would not show up as a duplicate record. All of the fields would have to be exactly duplicated. So I'll pick on next. Now it says, what fields do I want to show when they are duplicated? Well, I might as well show all of the fields. Maybe I'll see some differences or see why they might be duplicated. And I'll pick on next. And now we'll give this a name. It already have most of the name there. I'll just put a QRY in front of it. You don't have to use that naming standard, but a lot of people do. And I'll pick on finish. So it turns out in my table, BMW is in there twice, this guy, Long Life Tofu, Mozzarella, Outback Lager, and I guess that's caviar, is in there twice. Now, one of those is the original record. So you don't want to delete all of those records because one of them is the original for each set. So you'd have to evaluate to see which one you want to keep and which one you want to duplicate. Which one you want to keep. But that was a really quick way to find your duplicate data within your tables. I'm going to close that window. That was another one of those query wizards. Under the Create tab, you pick on Query Wizard. So I showed you the cross-tab Query Wizard, and I showed you the Find Duplicates Query Wizard. The last query that I'm going to show you within this session is the Find Unmatched Query Wizard. With that, you can look at two different tables and see if there's any records in one table that are not in a different table. I'd like to see if there's any customers that do not have a corresponding order. So I'll pick on Find Unmatched Query Wizard, and I'll click on OK. The query that you create will list records in the table that you select below that have no related records in the table that you select on the next screen. For example, you can find customers that have no orders, and that's exactly the example that we're going to do. So I'll pick on the customers table, and I'll pick on Next. Then it says which table or query contains the related records. I'll pick on the orders table, and I'll pick on Next. What piece of information is in both tables? To make this one work, the two tables have to have a common field. That goes back to the relational database concept of access. So here's the customer ID on one side, and you pick on the common field customer ID on the other side. Now, they don't have to have the same field name, as long as they have the same data type, and as long as the underlying data is the same. It's always nice when the field name is the same, but that's not always the case in real life. So here I picked on customer ID on this side, customer ID on this side, and then I picked on the double arrow, and then that caused the matching fields to occur. All right, so to make this query work, the two tables have to have a common field, although the common field does not have to have the same name. I'll pick on Next. What fields do I want? Again, I'll pick on all of the fields. I want to see, all of the fields for those people that don't have a corresponding order. I'll pick on Next. Once again, I'll give it a name. I'll put QRY before that. We'll pick on Finish, and just like that, it shows me that there's two customers in the customers table that don't yet have a corresponding record in the orders table. That was called the Find Unmatched Query Wizard. Very powerful result right there. Many of my queries I made today were under query design, and then you just make the query from scratch. And then I showed you the Query Wizard, where you have three very powerful queries that you could use as well. I hope you liked today's video. So please leave comments. Let me know what you think about my videos. Please subscribe and share my channel. And thank you so much. I'll see you the next time. Thanks, everybody.